You're watching Picks on Politics with Dan Manarino.
And welcome back to Picks on Politics, everybody. The New York State budget deadline is this upcoming Tuesday. One of Governor Kathy Hochul's priorities for this season is to reform New York's evidence laws, which were passed in 2019. Now, the governor's proposal includes three major provisions. Let me break it down for you. Prosecutors would only be required to turn over materials that are directly relevant to the charges instead of turning over all materials related to the case, which is how it is now. Defendants would be required to challenge disagreements over discovery, which is evidence, with 35 days of prosecutors certifying they have turned everything over. Now, this proposal would also require defendants to prove that they were prejudiced by prosecutors failing to turn over evidence for a case to be fully dismissed instead of remedied. Now, several New York Democrats support the proposal, including Congressman Dan Goldman, who wrote a letter calling on Albany to put this into effect, and he is joining me now to discuss this and more. So, Congressman, great to have you back.
Great to be here.
Let's talk about this, right? Because it can get a little convoluted to the everyday person, and a lot of folks are looking at this saying, is this what the change is needed to make me feel safer on the streets? So what do you think about that?
Well, look, there really are, I think, fundamentally two things that are problematic about our discovery laws and that don't really prejudice the defendants at all, but make victims' rights and ensuring victims' rights more difficult. First is the administrative burden. When you have this very broad standard of related conduct, you could have 10 officers who are on the scene, and that means you have to get all of their materials, all of their body cams, even if you're never going to use it in the trial. And so DAs are not prosecuting cases that they would otherwise prosecute purely because of the administrative burden. And then the other thing is that if there happens to be some materials that are found after that deadline, even if they're not going to be used and they're not relevant to the case can be and is often dismissed. Yeah. And so that's an unequal, unfair remedy. And so those are really, I think, the two issues that need to be corrected.
So I have a lot of support. You, among other New York congressional members who are Democrats, are supporting this. The police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, supports this. The Reverend Al Sharpton supports it. The 5 district attorneys support it. But Albany lawmakers aren't on board just yet. Andre Stewart-Cousins, Carl Heastie are saying, well, I'm not really sure just yet. Have you had a conversation with them about it?
I have spoken with them, and I wouldn't characterize it that they're not aware of these issues and they don't recognize the problem. I think that, as with all these things, they need to be hashed out, and you need to make sure that it's done properly, and so that it's done in a way that ensures that the thrust of the law, which is right, which is we do not want people languishing in Rikers Island simply because the prosecutor hasn't turned over the evidence. That is not a good result. And that was, I think, the impetus of the original law. And that remains a very important policy goal. But some of the tweaking that needs to happen so that it doesn't have a negative and adverse impact that was not anticipated. And that's really what this is.
So you think you'll be able to sway them? I mean, this is what negotiations are all about. But you think it'll actually get passed?
I don't know. I hope so. I hope that whatever the ultimate outcome is, that it really addresses those two fundamentally unfair things.
Okay, I want to talk about some big political headlines that kind of played out this week. One of them coming just yesterday, where President Trump pulled back on nominating Congresswoman Elise Stefanik for the UN ambassador position because he was fearing that there may lose another Republican seat heading into a midterm election, right? So how do you view that? Are Republicans in trouble in certain seats, like an Elise Stefanik seat, or do you think that Democrats will regain control in the midterms?
Well, I think it speaks for itself. The fact that he nominated her, knowing what the consequences of that were, he was aware of the very slim majority in the House. He was aware that she would be vacating her seat. And now to pull it back reflects a couple of things. The first is nobody's safe on the Republican side. And we saw this in Pennsylvania, a state Senate race where a Democrat had not won for decades and decades. Yeah. The Republican had won the last time, or Trump had won by 15 points in the district, and a Democrat won. And the Republicans are scared because their policies are crushing the American people. The promises Donald Trump made are broken day in and day out, and they're going after the most important government programs, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and that's trickling down. So Elise Stefanik, they're worried, Elise Stefanik, who won by 24 points, that seat is in jeopardy. And I'll tell you something, if they're worried about that seat, then you know they're worried about Lawler and Lalota and Malliotakis.
Is this just your thoughts on it, or because he just won? And won overwhelmingly. I mean, he won every swing state, President Trump, that is. And so we're just a few months into his administration. And so do you think in those few months there's already been a shift?
100%. Every single New York Republican voted already to cut Medicaid. They're 1/3 of their constituents in almost all of those districts are on Medicaid. The American people know that their food benefits are getting cut, their housing benefits, their health care benefits. Donald Trump and Elon Musk are indiscriminately going after essential federal programs that affect hundreds of millions of Americans, and people are seeing that, and they are reacting to that, and that's why Elise Stefanik was with Trump.
Okay, I want to talk about the local race for New York City mayor. You have been supporting Zellner Myrie. New poll just came out from Pix 11 at Emerson College, and the Hill shows him pretty much at the bottom of the pack, right? Andrew Cuomo far and away the front runner here at this point. If Andrew Cuomo were to win the primary, would you support him?
Yeah, I'll support the Democrat in the race, but I think it's early, and I think part of the reason I supported Zellner Myrie is that he does represent, I think, a very positive new generation of Democrat that our city really needs. He is pragmatic. He is thoughtful. He is creative. I've worked with him because we overlap in Brooklyn, but he's not very well known. And so I think the more that people get to know Zellner Myrie, the more that they will like him.
Okay, I want to talk to you about this big plan right now to transform the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. Okay, so just for the background, you're chair of the planning process, right? It's revitalizing, which would include a maritime port and a mixed-use hub for business and housing. The folks who are against it right now are saying it's not enough affordable housing. So is there a middle ground here about affordable housing? Because that is a key word for so many right now about making housing affordable. Well,
it's both making housing affordable and making housing, building housing supply.
Very true.
And we've been working very hard, and I've been pushing very hard to increase the affordability. We now have reached a point where the affordability for all of the housing will be 35% of the units at an average of 60% AMI, which is
higher than what was
deeply
originally
affordable. Yes, we've gone up since the original 25% proposal. We're still working on it, but having affordable housing is essential. And this is a really unique opportunity to completely remake the Brooklyn waterfront, with this front and center being a very active and successful port. Using the Blue Highway so that we're getting trucks off the road and using barges to freight, putting some housing in, but also putting a lot of mixed-use commercial light infrastructure. It's a great opportunity to rejuvenate a 120-acre plot of land that has been really neglected and deteriorated.
Uptick in traffic because of what will play out there. Is there infrastructure upgrades to the surrounding area to kind of handle that?
Absolutely, and we're very focused on that, not only increasing public transportation, but really digging into the traffic issues related to the BQE, which is right there. There's the ongoing BQE project, which I'm also involved in, and trying to renovate that as it's deteriorating on the triple cantilever. And they all dovetail together, and this is all part of the overall vision for the neighborhood.
All right, Congressman Dan Goldman, good to see you. A lot of topics we discovered. Good to have you back. Coming back soon, okay? In just a few short months, everybody, New Yorkers will cast their ballots in that primary race for New York City mayor. We just touched upon it. See how former Governor Cuomo and Mayor Adams are doing compared to just a month ago in our new poll with Emerson College in the Hill. We're back in just a few minutes.